What if I told you the biggest thing holding you back right now is not your lack of talent, not your lack of time, but the fact that you're waiting to feel ready? What if success has nothing to do with motivation and everything to do with doing things before you feel like it? And what if the only thing standing between you and the life you want is one small, imperfect action you keep avoiding? Chapter 1. Stop thinking, start moving. Most people believe that before they start something important, they need to feel ready, confident, and motivated. But the truth is far more uncomfortable and far more powerful, because readiness is a myth, and waiting for motivation is one of the biggest reasons people stay stuck for years. You see, the real problem is not laziness or lack of discipline. It is inertia, that heavy mental resistance that makes even the smallest task feel overwhelming. And the more you think about doing something, the heavier it feels, until, eventually, you do nothing at all. Imagine wanting to start a new skill, like playing guitar or painting, but instead of allowing yourself to be a beginner, you expect yourself to perform like a professional from day one. Your brain instantly labels the task as difficult and uncomfortable, and instead of trying, you delay it. You tell yourself you will start tomorrow or next week, or when you feel more prepared. But that moment rarely comes, because motivation does not come before action, it comes after it. And this is where most people get it completely wrong. They sit around waiting to feel inspired, not realizing that inspiration is created through movement, not thought. The moment you take even the smallest step, your brain shifts from resistance to engagement. For example, if you tell yourself you need to write a 10-page report, your mind will resist because it sees the task as big and exhausting. But if you reduce the goal to just writing one paragraph suddenly, it feels manageable. And once you begin, something interesting happens. Your brain starts cooperating. Your focus improves. And what felt impossible a few minutes ago starts feeling doable. This is the power of lowering your standards at the beginning. Not forever, but just enough to break the initial resistance. Because perfection is not the starting point. It is the result of repetition. Every expert you admire once produced bad work, awkward attempts, and imperfect results, but they kept going while others kept waiting. Think about exercise. Most people say they will start when they feel motivated, but days turn into weeks and nothing happens. However, if instead of aiming for a full 1-hour workout, you simply commit to 5 minutes of stretching, you remove the pressure, and once you start moving, your body naturally wants to continue. This is how momentum works. It is created through action, and once it builds, stopping becomes harder than continuing. The hardest part of any task is not the work itself, but starting the work. And this is where most people lose. Not because they are incapable, but because they are trapped in overthinking. They want the perfect plan, the perfect timing, the perfect mindset. But none of those things matter if there is no action. The reality is your first attempt will not be great. Your first draft will be messy. Your first try will feel uncomfortable and uncertain. But that is exactly how progress begins. Consider how a child learns to walk. They do not wait until they are sure they will not fall. They fall repeatedly, and through those imperfect attempts, they eventually learn balance and confidence. Now imagine if they waited for perfection before trying. They would never walk. And yet, that is exactly how many people approach their goals. They delay action until they feel ready, which keeps them stuck indefinitely. The key is to change your approach. Instead of focusing on the final outcome, focus on the smallest possible step you can take right now. Make it so easy that your brain has no reason to resist. Because once you start, you enter a different mental state, a state where action replaces doubt and progress replaces fear. And as you continue, even in small increments, your confidence begins to grow. Not because you suddenly became more talented, but because you proved to yourself that you can take action without waiting for motivation. And that realization changes everything. Because now you are no longer dependent on feelings to move forward. You create your own momentum. You build your own discipline. And slowly you break free from the cycle of overthinking and procrastination. So the next time you feel stuck, do not ask yourself how to do everything perfectly. Ask yourself, what is the smallest action you can take right now, and then do it immediately. Because your future is not built on perfect plans or perfect timing. It is built on imperfect action taken consistently. And once you understand this, you stop waiting and you start moving. And that is the moment your life truly begins to change. Chapter 2. Motivation is a lie. Most people live their lives controlled by a simple belief that sounds logical, but is actually deeply limiting. And that belief is that they need to feel motivated before they take action. They think that one day they will wake up feeling energized, focused, and ready to take on their goals. And only then will they finally start working on the things that matter. But the reality is that motivation is unreliable, unpredictable, and temporary. And if you depend on it, you will constantly find yourself stuck in a cycle of starting and stopping, feeling excited for a short period of time, and then losing interest just as quickly. Because motivation is an emotion, and emotions are not designed to be stable or consistent. They rise and fall based on your environment, your mood, your energy, and even small external factors. This is why you can feel extremely motivated after watching an inspiring video or listening to a powerful speech. But that feeling fades within hours or days, and you are left exactly where you started. The problem is not that you lack motivation. The problem is that you are relying on it as your primary driver, when in reality, action is what creates motivation, not the other way around. This is a fundamental shift in thinking that changes everything, because it means you do not have to wait to feel ready. You just have to begin. Think about a time when you did not feel like doing something at all. Maybe studying, working out, or completing a task. But once you forced yourself to start, you slowly got into it, and eventually, it did not feel as difficult as it seemed at the beginning, that is, because taking action changes your mental state. Your brain is designed to follow behavior. Once you start something, your mind begins to align with that action, and it becomes easier to continue. This is why the hardest part is always the first step, not because the task itself is impossible, but because your brain is resisting the transition from rest to effort. However, once that transition happens, your resistance decreases and your focus increases. This is also why people who are consistent do not rely on motivation. They rely on systems and habits. They remove the need to make a decision every day about whether they feel like doing something, and instead, they make it automatic. For example, someone who exercises regularly does not wake up every day feeling excited to work out. In fact, many days they feel tired or unmotivated, but they still do it because it is part of their routine. They have trained themselves to act regardless of how they feel. And this is the difference between people who achieve their goals and those who keep waiting. One group takes action first and allows motivation to follow, while the other waits for motivation and never builds momentum. Another important thing to understand is that action creates results, even small ones, and those results create a sense of progress. When you see progress, your confidence increases, and when your confidence increases, you naturally feel more motivated to continue. This creates a positive cycle where action leads to results, results lead to confidence, and confidence leads to more action. But if you never start this cycle, never begins. Instead, you stay trapped in overthinking, doubting yourself, and waiting for the perfect moment, which again never arrives. This is why it is so powerful to lower the barrier to entry for any task. Instead of thinking about completing everything at once, you focus on doing the smallest possible version of that task. If you want to read, you read 2 pages. If you want to write, you write a few lines. If you want to exercise, you move your body for 5 minutes. These small actions may seem insignificant, but they are not, because they break the pattern of inaction. And once that pattern is broken, you gain control. You prove to yourself that you can act without motivation. And that builds a new identity. Instead of seeing yourself as someone who procrastinates, you start seeing yourself as someone who takes action no matter what. And that identity shift is incredibly powerful, because your behavior always follows your self-image. When you believe you are the type of person who gets things done, you naturally begin to act that way more often. Over time, this becomes your default behavior, and you no longer depend on temporary bursts of inspiration to move forward. Instead, you have built a system where action is automatic, and motivation becomes a byproduct rather than a requirement. So the next time you catch yourself saying, "I will start when I feel motivated," stop and remind yourself that motivation is not the cause, it is the effect. Your job is not to wait. Your job is to act, even if it is small, even if it is imperfect, even if you do not feel ready. Because once you take that first step, everything begins to change. Your mind shifts, your energy shifts, your confidence grows, and suddenly the thing that once felt impossible starts to feel within reach. And that is how real progress is made, not by waiting for the right feeling, but by creating it through consistent action. Chapter 3. Embrace risk. Escape the comfort zone. Most people spend their entire lives trying to avoid risk because risk feels uncomfortable, uncertain, and dangerous. And while that instinct may protect you in the short term, it quietly limits your growth in the long run, because every meaningful opportunity in life carries some level of uncertainty. And if you constantly choose safety over challenge, you end up staying exactly where you are. The truth is, risk is not just about the possibility of failure. It is also about the possibility of transformation. But your brain is wired to focus more on what could go wrong rather than what could go right, which is why stepping outside your comfort zone feels so difficult. Your comfort zone is predictable. It is familiar. It is safe. But it is also where progress slows down and eventually stops. Because growth only happens when you are willing to face something new, something uncertain, something that stretches your current abilities. Think about any skill you have ever improved at, whether it was speaking, learning, working, or creating. At some point, you had to do something that felt uncomfortable and unfamiliar. And that discomfort was not a sign that you were doing something wrong. It was a sign that you were expanding. But most people misinterpret that feeling, and instead of leaning into it, they pull back. They choose the easy option. They delay action. They tell themselves they will try later, when they feel more confident or more prepared. But confidence does not come before action. It comes as a result of it. And the only way to build it is by taking small, calculated risks repeatedly. Risk does not mean acting blindly or making reckless decisions. It means evaluating a situation, understanding the possible outcomes, and still choosing to move forward despite uncertainty. Because waiting for complete certainty is another form of procrastination. You can analyze, think, and plan endlessly, but at some point you have to act. And when you do, you begin to realize that most of the fears you had were exaggerated by your mind. The task was not as difficult, the situation was not as bad, and the outcome was not as negative as you imagined. This realization slowly rewires the way you think about risk. Instead of seeing it as something to avoid, you start seeing it as something to use, something that pushes you forward instead of holding you back. And every time you take a risk, no matter how small, you gain experience. You learn what works, what does not, and how to adjust. Even when things do not go as planned, you are still moving forward, because failure is not the opposite of success. It is part of the process that leads to it. People who achieve extraordinary results are not the ones who avoid failure. They are the ones who become comfortable with it. They understand that each setback carries valuable feedback, and instead of stopping, they adapt and continue. This mindset makes them resilient. It strengthens their ability to handle uncertainty. And over time, they become less afraid of taking chances because they trust their ability to figure things out. Another important aspect of embracing risk is that it expands your perspective. When you try new things, meet new challenges, or explore unfamiliar paths, you expose yourself to opportunities that you would have never encountered if you stayed within your comfort zone. Many of the biggest breakthroughs in life come from unexpected directions, but you can only discover them if you are willing to step into the unknown. Staying safe may protect you from failure, but it also prevents you from discovering your true potential. And this applies not only to your professional life, but also to your personal life. Whether it is expressing your thoughts, starting something new, or making a bold decision, every meaningful step forward involves some level of risk. And the more you practice taking these risks, the easier it becomes. Your tolerance for uncertainty increases, your confidence grows, and your fear begins to lose its power over you. Instead of asking, what if this goes wrong, you start asking, what if this goes right? And that shift in perspective opens doors that were previously invisible to you. It allows you to take action where others hesitate, and it gives you an edge, because while most people are stuck overthinking, you are moving, learning, and adapting. So the goal is not to eliminate fear completely, because that is not possible, but to act despite it. To recognize that fear is simply a signal that you are stepping into something new, something that has the potential to help you grow. And when you start viewing risk in this way, it stops being an obstacle and becomes a tool that you can use to build a stronger, more capable version of yourself. And the more you use it, the more control you gain over your life. Because instead of being limited by what feels safe, you are guided by what helps you grow, and that is the point where real progress begins. Chapter 4. The Power of a Don't-Do List. Most people believe that being productive means doing more, completing more tasks, staying busy throughout the day, and constantly adding new things to their to-do list. But the truth is that productivity is not just about what you do. It is equally about what you choose not to do. Because every day your time and energy are limited. And if you spend them on the wrong things, even the hardest work will not lead to meaningful progress. This is why one of the most powerful, yet overlooked tools for improving focus and efficiency is something called a don't-do list. A simple concept that can completely change the way you manage your time and attention. Instead of only writing down tasks you need to complete, you also identify the behaviors, habits, and activities that you need to avoid. The things that distract you, drain your energy, or pull you away from your most important goals. Because often the biggest obstacle to productivity is not lack of effort, but lack of clarity about what deserves your attention. Think about how easily your day can get consumed by small distractions. Checking your phone, scrolling through social media, responding to non-urgent messages, or jumping between tasks without finishing any of them. Each of these actions may seem harmless in the moment, but together they create constant interruptions that break your focus and reduce the quality of your work. Your brain needs uninterrupted time to enter a state of deep concentration where real progress happens. But when you allow distractions to take over, you stay in a shallow mode of thinking, where you are busy, but not truly productive. This is where a don't-do list becomes powerful, because it forces you to become aware of your biggest time wasters and consciously eliminate them. For example, you might decide that you will not check social media before a certain time in the day, or that you will not respond to emails immediately unless they are urgent, or that you will avoid unnecessary meetings that do not contribute to your goals. By clearly defining these boundaries, you reduce decision fatigue, because you no longer have to think every time whether you should do something or not. The decision has already been made in advance, and this frees up mental energy that you can use for more important tasks. Another benefit of a don't-do list is that it helps you protect your priorities. Many people struggle, not because they do not know what to do, but because they say yes to too many things that do not align with their goals. They take on extra responsibilities, agree to commitments out of habit or fear of missing out, and end up overwhelmed with tasks that do not truly matter. A don't-do list gives you permission to say no. It reminds you that every time you say yes to something unimportant, you are saying no to something that actually matters. And over time, this shift in thinking allows you to focus more on high-impact activities that move your life forward. It also improves your discipline, because instead of relying on willpower in the moment, you create a system that guides your behavior. When you feel the urge to check your phone or switch tasks, your list acts as a reminder of your priorities and helps you stay on track. This reduces the chances of falling into old habits and makes it easier to build new ones. Another important aspect is that a don't-do list is not fixed. It evolves over time as you become more aware of your patterns. You might start by identifying obvious distractions, but as you observe your behavior more closely, you will notice deeper habits that need to be addressed, such as overcommitting, avoiding difficult tasks, or seeking constant stimulation. And by continuously refining your list, you create a personalized system that supports your growth. This approach also brings mental clarity because your mind is no longer cluttered with endless decisions about what to do next. You have already eliminated the unnecessary options, which makes it easier to focus on what truly matters. In a world where distractions are constantly competing for your attention, learning what to ignore becomes just as important as knowing what to pursue. And when you master this skill, you gain a significant advantage, because you are no longer reacting to everything around you, but intentionally directing your time and energy toward your goals. This is what separates people who are constantly busy from those who are truly effective. The busy ones fill their days with activity, while the effective ones protect their focus and invest it wisely. So, if you want to improve your productivity, do not just ask yourself what you need to do. Ask yourself what you need to stop doing. Identify the habits that are holding you back, the distractions that are stealing your time, and the commitments that are not aligned with your priorities. Write them down, make them clear, and commit to avoiding them. Because sometimes the fastest way to move forward is not by doing more, but by removing what is unnecessary. And once you do that, you will find that you have more time, more energy, and more focus to dedicate to the things that truly matter. And that is where real progress begins. Chapter 5. Focus on what truly matters. Most people struggle not because they are lazy or incapable, but because they are trying to do too many things at the same time. And when everything feels important, nothing actually gets the attention it deserves. This constant juggling creates mental clutter, reduces focus, and leads to mediocre results across the board. And that is why one of the most effective ways to take control of your time and energy is by learning how to prioritize with clarity, using a simple but powerful concept known as the burner list method. This method is based on the idea that not all tasks are equal, and not everything deserves your immediate attention. Instead of treating your to-do list as a single endless stream of tasks, you divide your responsibilities into two clear categories, known as the front burner and the back burner. The front burner represents the few critical tasks that truly matter, the ones that directly contribute to your most important goals and require your full focus and energy. These are the tasks that move your life forward in a meaningful way, and if completed consistently, they create real progress. On the other hand, the back burner contains tasks that are still valuable, but not urgent or not essential at the current moment. These could be ideas you want to explore later, skills you want to develop over time, or responsibilities that can wait without causing major consequences. The problem most people face is that they treat everything as if it belongs on the front burner, and as a result they spread their attention too thin, constantly switching between tasks without completing anything effectively. But when you adopt the burner list mindset, you give yourself permission to focus deeply on a limited number of priorities, while intentionally setting aside the rest for later. Think of it like a kitchen where a chef is preparing multiple dishes. The items on the front burner require constant attention. They need to be monitored, adjusted, and actively worked on, while the items on the back burner can cook slowly in the background without immediate focus. If the chef tries to give equal attention to everything at once, the quality of all the dishes suffers. But by focusing on what needs attention now and trusting that other things can wait, the chef produces better results. The same principle applies to your life, because your attention is your most valuable resource, and how you allocate it determines the quality of your outcomes. When you clearly define your front burner tasks, you eliminate confusion about what to work on next, you reduce decision fatigue, and you create a sense of direction that makes it easier to take action. Instead of jumping between tasks based on urgency or impulse, you follow a structured approach where your most important work gets done first. This not only improves productivity, but also increases satisfaction, because you can see tangible progress in the areas that matter most. Another advantage of this method is that it protects you from distractions and unnecessary commitments. When a new task or opportunity appears, you can quickly evaluate whether it belongs on the front burner or the back burner, and this simple decision-making process prevents you from overloading yourself. Many people say yes to too many things because they lack a clear system for prioritization. But when you use the burner list, you become more intentional with your choices. You understand that every time you add something to your front burner, you are taking attention away from something else, so you become more selective and disciplined. Over time, this habit strengthens your focus and helps you build consistency, which is essential for long-term success. It also reduces stress, because you are no longer trying to do everything at once. Instead, you're working through your priorities in a structured and manageable way. Another important aspect of the burner list is that it is flexible and dynamic. Your priorities will change over time, and your list should reflect that. Something that is on the back burner today might move to the front burner tomorrow, as your goals evolve and circumstances shift. This regular review process keeps you aligned with what truly matters and ensures that you are always directing your energy in the right direction. In addition, this method encourages you to let go of the pressure to be perfect in every area of your life at the same time. It reminds you that focus requires sacrifice, and that it is okay to temporarily set aside certain things in order to excel in others. This mindset is crucial because trying to balance everything equally often leads to burnout and frustration. But when you accept that different areas of your life will take priority at different times, you create a more sustainable and effective approach to growth. Ultimately, the burner list method is not just about organizing tasks. It is about training your mind to think in terms of priorities rather than possibilities. It helps you move away from reactive behavior, where you respond to whatever comes your way, and towards proactive behavior, where you intentionally choose where to invest your time and energy. And when you consistently focus on your front burner tasks, you begin to see significant progress in the areas that matter most. Your efforts become more impactful, your results become more meaningful, and your path becomes clearer. So instead of trying to do everything at once, take a step back. Identify what truly deserves your attention right now. Place it on your front burner and give it your full focus while trusting that everything else can wait. Because real success does not come from doing more. It comes from doing what matters most with complete focus and intention. Chapter 6. Stop overthinking. Start deciding. Every single day you are making decisions, some small, some big. And while it may not seem like a big deal, these constant choices slowly drain your mental energy until you feel overwhelmed, confused, and mentally exhausted. This is what happens when you fall into the trap of overthinking, where even the simplest decisions start to feel complicated, and you spend more time analyzing than actually acting. Your mind keeps going in circles, thinking about every possible outcome, every risk, every mistake that could happen. And instead of gaining clarity, you create more doubt, and the more you delay decisions, the heavier they feel. This is why many people struggle with progress, not because they lack intelligence or ability, but because they are stuck in endless analysis, waiting for the perfect answer that does not exist. And this is exactly where the superstructure decision model becomes powerful, because it gives you a simple system to make faster, clearer decisions without getting trapped in overthinking. The idea is not to eliminate thinking, but to structure it in a way that leads to action instead of confusion. Because the problem is not thinking itself, the problem is unstructured thinking. When your mind has no clear framework, it jumps from one possibility to another without reaching a conclusion. But when you create a predefined system for decision-making, you reduce uncertainty and make the process more efficient. For example, instead of overanalyzing every small choice like what to wear, what to eat, or which task to start first, you create simple rules that guide those decisions automatically. This is why many highly successful people simplify their daily routines. They remove unnecessary choices so they can save their mental energy for more important decisions. Because your brain has limited capacity, and if you waste it on trivial matters, you will have less clarity for things that truly matter. The superstructure model works by helping you categorize decisions into levels, so you know how much time and energy each one deserves. Not every decision requires deep analysis. Some can be made instantly based on predefined rules, while others may require a bit more thought, but still within a limited time frame. This prevents you from spending hours thinking about something that could have been decided in minutes. Another key part of this model is setting decision boundaries. Instead of giving yourself unlimited time to think, you create a deadline for making a choice. This forces your brain to focus on what truly matters and prevents it from wandering into unnecessary possibilities. Because when you know you have limited time, you naturally prioritize the most relevant information and ignore the rest. This not only speeds up decision-making but also builds confidence, because you train yourself to trust your judgment instead of constantly doubting it. And confidence in decision-making is not something you are born with. It is something you develop through practice. The more decisions you make, the better you become at making them. Even if some of them turn out to be wrong, they still provide valuable feedback that improves your future choices. Another important aspect is understanding that most decisions are not permanent. People often overthink because they believe that one wrong choice will ruin everything. But in reality, many decisions can be adjusted, corrected, or reversed later. And when you realize this, you reduce the pressure of making the perfect choice and focus instead on making a good enough decision quickly, because speed combined with learning is far more powerful than slow perfection. This approach also helps you avoid decision fatigue, which is the mental exhaustion that comes from making too many choices without a system. When you simplify your decisions and follow a structured approach, you conserve energy and maintain clarity throughout the day. This allows you to stay focused, productive, and in control. Another benefit of the superstructure model is that it aligns your decisions with your priorities. When you know what truly matters to you, it becomes easier to make choices that support your goals, instead of getting distracted by temporary impulses or external pressures. This creates consistency in your actions, and over time, that consistency leads to significant results, because success is not built on a few perfect decisions, but on many small, good decisions made consistently. So instead of trying to find the perfect answer, every time shift your focus to creating a system that helps you decide faster and act sooner. Trust yourself more. Limit your options. Set clear boundaries. And remember that action is always more valuable than endless thinking. Because at the end of the day, your life is shaped not by how much you think, but by how effectively you decide and act. And once you master this skill, you break free from the cycle of overthinking and step into a life of clarity, confidence, and continuous progress. Chapter 7. Build momentum. Become unstoppable. Most people underestimate the power of momentum, and because of that, they keep relying on willpower and motivation to change their lives. But willpower is limited, and motivation is temporary, while momentum, once built, can carry you forward, even on days when you feel tired, distracted, or completely unmotivated. Momentum is what turns small actions into big results over time, and it is what separates people who keep starting and stopping from those who stay consistent and actually achieve their goals. The problem is that momentum does not appear instantly. It has to be created, and the only way to create it is by taking action repeatedly, even when it feels small or insignificant. In the beginning, everything feels slow and difficult, because you are pushing against resistance. Your brain is not used to the new behavior, and it tries to pull you back into old habits. This is why the first few steps always feel the hardest, because you are trying to break a pattern that has been reinforced over time. But once you push through that initial resistance, something starts to change. Your actions begin to feel more natural. Your mind becomes more aligned with your behavior, and the effort required to continue starts to decrease. This is the point where momentum begins to build, and once it does, it becomes a powerful force that works in your favor, because now, instead of forcing yourself to act, you feel pulled toward action. Your habits start to take over, and what once required effort now becomes automatic. This is why consistency is more important than intensity, because doing something small every day creates a stronger foundation than doing something big once in a while. Many people make the mistake of trying to do too much at once. They set unrealistic goals. They push themselves too hard in. Chapter 8. Discipline over everything. The system that sets you free. Most people think discipline is restrictive, something that takes away freedom and forces you to live a controlled, rigid life. But in reality, discipline is the very thing that creates true freedom, because without it, you become a slave to your moods, your distractions, and your impulses. You do what feels easy instead of what matters, and over time that leads to frustration, regret, and a constant feeling of being stuck. While disciplined people may look strict from the outside, they actually experience more control, more clarity, and more progress, because they do not depend on how they feel in the moment. They depend on systems that guide their actions, regardless of their emotions. And this is the key difference that separates average results from extraordinary ones. Because if you rely on motivation, you will only act when you feel like it, and those moments are rare and inconsistent. But if you build discipline, you create a structure where action becomes automatic. You remove the need to negotiate with yourself every day about whether you should do something or not. The decision is already made, and your only job is to follow through. This reduces mental fatigue and makes it easier to stay consistent over long periods of time. Discipline is not about doing everything perfectly. It is about showing up even when it is inconvenient, even when you are tired, even when you do not feel like it, because those are the moments that truly define your progress. Anyone can take action when they feel motivated, but only a disciplined person can take action when they do not. And that is why discipline builds confidence, because every time you follow through on a commitment, you strengthen the belief that you can trust yourself. And self-trust is one of the most powerful forces you can develop, because it affects every area of your life. When you trust yourself, you stop second guessing your decisions, you stop delaying action, and you start moving forward with certainty. Another important aspect of discipline is that it helps you build habits. And habits are what shape your life in the long run. You do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. If your daily habits are weak, inconsistent, or driven by emotion, your results will reflect that. But if your habits are strong, structured, and aligned with your goals, you will naturally move in the right direction without constantly forcing yourself. This is why it is important to focus on building systems instead of chasing outcomes. Instead of saying, "I want to be successful," you focus on what successful people do daily, and you build those actions into your routine. Over time, those small actions compound and create results that seem extraordinary, but are actually the product of consistent, disciplined behavior. Another powerful benefit of discipline is that it eliminates distractions, because when you have a clear system in place, you are less likely to get pulled into activities that do not serve your goals. You know what needs to be done, and you stay focused on it. This does not mean you will never face challenges or moments of weakness, but it means you have a structure that helps you get back on track quickly. Discipline also creates stability in your life because instead of being controlled by external circumstances, you maintain control over your actions, regardless of what is happening around you. And this stability allows you to make steady progress even in uncertain situations. Many people wait for the perfect conditions to start something. They think they need more time, more resources, or the right environment. But disciplined people start with what they have and adjust along the way. They understand that progress is created through action, not perfect conditions. And this mindset allows them to move forward while others stay stuck waiting. Discipline is also closely connected to identity because the more consistently you act in a certain way, the more you start to see yourself as that kind of person. If you show up every day and do the work even when it is hard, you begin to identify as someone who is reliable, focused, and committed. And once that identity is formed, it becomes easier to maintain those behaviors because they align with how you see yourself. You are no longer forcing yourself to act. You are simply being who you have become. And that is when discipline stops feeling like effort and starts feeling like your natural way of living. So instead of chasing motivation or waiting for the perfect moment, focus on building discipline in small, consistent steps. Create simple routines. Remove unnecessary choices. Commit to your actions and follow through no matter how you feel. Because in the end, discipline is not about restriction. It is about empowerment. It gives you control over your life. It helps you turn your goals into reality, and it allows you to create a future that is not based on chance, but on intentional, consistent action. And once you understand this, you realize that discipline is not something to avoid. It is something to embrace because it is the foundation of everything you want to achieve.